Hey, if you're thinking about getting an Hcr long travel kit, I'm going to give you some tips for the install because the directions really suck and you're going to have a lot of questions and stumble your way through it. So, to save you some time, so let's start. The center nut that holds the hub on. Make sure you loosen those all the way around before you take the wheels off. You take the wheels off and then try to do it after the fact. It's just darn near impossible. And this is in no particular order, your sway bar here, right here. So when you are installing the new arms, you need to index it up. Also, you need to make sure when you put it on, it's perfectly centered. If it's off centered either a little bit, the way the caliper and the brake disc come together, you can lose half of your braking. So you need to make sure it's centered. Also, the axles, I don't like the axles. The Napa clamps that they recommended, I could never get enough tension on, especially on the smaller side here. The other side, so-so, but I ended up, for the most part, switching back to hose clamps after, I couldn't keep enough tension on them, and they would pop loose, and the boot would just kind of expand and get past the point here where it was just kind of loose over here. The axle tapers out, so when this boot pops over here, then you have basically kind of like an 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch of space all the way around. Also, the axles, bad design in the sense that the groove on the inside of your CV joint, there's a groove that goes in, so therefore it can then in turn rest on a cut made in the axle shaft, and that keeps it from going in and out. Well, the problem with these new axle shafts is, if you look at the stock axle, when you remove it, it has a very deep groove for this inner lip of the CV joint boot to sit in. These are really shallow, so it keeps jumping out of that groove and popping the boot loose. So in some spots where I've had problems, I've had to run my hose clamp, and then I run a secondary clamp actually on that axle. Also, the kink shocks are really cool. The ride of the kit rides really good, but the kink shocks are really cool. But the problem is they must have shortened the length on the line that comes out of the shock reservoir. So in older kits, I've seen it installed along this rail here, but there's not enough slack here in this line for me to drop it on this rail right here and tighten it there. So I had to kind of half-ass it, clamp it there. Now my solution is I'm going to relocate them to here, and I'm going to use these Axia brackets, and so one will go here, the other will go down there, and of course there's clamps that go on the top and the clamp that goes around the reservoir. So that should solve that problem. In the back, you don't have a lot of clearance between that bottom bolt and your axle shaft tube. So if possible, you're either going to want to trim that bottom bolt or flip it so the nut's on the outside. Also, there are 0 torque instructions for anything, so I tightened things as tight as I thought they should be, but I kept losing hardware and things kept loosening. So try to get all your stock torque specs, because you'll want to torque everything back to factory. Also, I have the bed lift because I'm running 32s, which I regret, which I'll get into in a bit, but the bed lift instructions are bad as well, and it refers to disconnecting your lights, which is not a problem, obviously, because you're going to take this whole, the bed comes out fairly easy. You undo the hardware in the bed, bang, 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 and then you basically pull this out, and then you got 2 brackets, and then you assemble things back on. Don't bother trying to disconnect your lights here and here. Right here, if you look in here, if you climb under, right about here, there's a main harness disconnect here. So don't mess around on either side. Disconnect there, much easier. Now, the reason I wish I didn't do my 32s, I mean, they look cool and all that, but I have my clutch redone and it's chipped to do 65, but admittedly my clutch is set up actually for 30s, and it still does a pretty good job, but it's a little bit more luggy than I prefer. But the biggest thing is this bed lift kit. They're kind of vague on it, saying you have to trim some plastic, but they don't really tell you what that means. This whole inner liner looks like shit, and then you gotta decide if you want to cut it off. So here you got it poking down here, here you've got the whole liner there between the back of your seat back wall, and then basically the bed. You know, you have a gap there. So in retrospect, for that reason alone, I think I would have just preferred to get 30s and not mess with my bed lift at all. I'm probably forgetting about some things. Oh, also, don't bother trying to use all your old ball joints again. Just buy new ball joints. It's a pain in the ass to pull them in and out of the stock arms and try to replace them. And the way they're in there, it's just so easy to rip that boot that you're likely going to have to get new ones anyway. On my shocks, when I put on the coil, I did an inch of preload. I probably could have gotten away with a ½ an inch. And that's probably all I can think about. Tie rod end, extension tubes, those were no problem. Oh, also when you're putting in your axles, make sure they are completely flat, and then try to insert them in there for that clip to grab in there. If you try to do a little bit of an angle and shove it in, it's not going to go in there and clip. Also, in regards to popping off your old CVs and replacing the axles, there's a really good YouTube video where a guy totally tears apart a CV axle on the Kawasaki 750 quad. So watch that video, and that will help you figure out how to put in the new, or tear them apart and rebuild them. Once you struggle through one, the rest of them will go fairly easy. Also, the logos are going to be kind of indicative of which position your arms go in. You want to make sure, obviously, that you put them in the right spot and the right side. Some people have accidentally installed them in the wrong positions. So that's probably about it. If you follow some of those instructions I've given you, you should shave about 8 hours worth of headache installation time, and that's about that. Like I said, the kit's really a great kit as far as the way it rides and all that. Unfortunately, the directions suck, and there's not a lot of great technical service to really help you out and get you back on the road quick. So anyway, I keep hearing that they're supposed to come out with new directions, but I haven't seen them yet. So hopefully this helps you. Also on the back, I have the same dynamic of trying to figure out where I put my reservoir. Right now they're just kind of zip tied up there. Again, I have the Hcr mount similar to the ones I'm using in the front, and basically the aluminum part, I'm just going to drill a hole through the steel and hard mount that there, and then obviously put the reservoir on, and then the U-bolt or the C-clamp will hold it on. So that's that. Hope that helps. Bye.